the three-stranded cord. Last week we left off talking about the different stages of marriage. We had the honeymoon stage, the accommodation stage. That's when you're all the things that you get to do. You get to just all the fun things that a young couple gets to do. Open bank accounts together, raise children together. The challenge stage, where you realize that all life has brought a whole lot of bills. Children take time. You don't have as much time as you used to do. I used to be able to go hunting with my buddy 8 nights a week. And nowadays, I'm lucky if I get to go 2 times a year. It's pretty cool when your kids start hunting, though. You can take them with you, and there's your excuse to go hunting. You can spend time with the kids, and but there's a challenge phase where you realize that life is not the same anymore. Then you have the crossroads phase. We talked about that last week. Look what we did. That's the stage where children are starting to grow up and be on their own, and I'm sure that'll be a great stage where you can look back and your children are raised and just doing well for themselves. And this week we'll talk about the rebirth stage. The 5th and final stage of marriage is the rebirth stage. Look who we are. This is the phase where a couple is older, wiser, and more committed to each other. I remember, Bill and Tulane. Tulane, you guys were such an example to us, and I just appreciate that. And you guys had such a legacy together, and what an honor it is to have what you guys had. And I pray, if the Lord tarries, me and my sweetheart can have the same. In this phase, life is renewed with grandbabies, laughter, and family. To get to this stage, a couple must push through the phases. Look what we have to do, and look what we cannot do anymore. To reach different seasons in life. We each and every one of us go through hard and difficult seasons in life, but to get to an easier season, you have to get through this season. Don't give up. Don't allow the enemy to beat you down. Some people enter the stage and they end up in a divorce. Maybe they end up on drugs. They just can't handle the pressure. But I can rest assured, if you stand upon the Word of God and you allow Him to carry you through the struggles of these difficult stages, there's glory on the other end. And I've read the end of the book too. Sometimes this isn't just about our relationships with one another or with friends. It's also our journey in life. One day we'll be able to get to heaven, and we'll look what we just went through, but look what we have now. And it's each stage of life. If you press through, there's glory on the other side. The rebirth phase is where a couple can look back and say, we made it, and it was worth it. Some days you just wonder, can we make it? But if you keep on pressing through, as Pastor always says, this too shall come to pass. And we'll be able to look back and say, it came to pass. And it's a glorious thing. This phase is also when a couple can circle back and look and say, look what we get to do. I'm not there yet, so I can only speculate. But you see just the older couples when they're not running around with their head cut off like a chicken. They get to sit back and slow down a little bit. They get to enjoy their grandbabies. I know my mom, she's nearing this stage, and that's her life mission, is to spend time with grandbabies, and just what a joy that can be. The most pressing issue in Christian marriages today is taking a casual approach to keeping the marriage covenant with God. Marriage relationships need to get back to the three-strand cord. This takes both people in a relationship. If a relationship is going to be strong the way God has intended it, it takes those three strands. It takes the husband, it takes the wife, and it takes God all woven together. If one of those strands can break, one of those strands can come apart, the person trying to hold the marriage back is not doing so alone, because even if one strand is broken, there are still two strands woven together. It is hard to put a marriage back together when one of those strands come apart, but it's not impossible, because you still have God woven with the other cord. If you're struggling with a spouse, if you're struggling with a loved one, or just any relationship, if God is in the midst of it, hang on to the Lord. He can do miracles. The person trying. Did you have something, Brother Doug? Yep. Hey, I wasn't sure there. The person trying to build the marriage back is not doing so alone, because even if one strand is broken, there are still two strands interwoven. You just remember that. It's if one strand is broken, just hang on to Jesus. He can do miracles. If the marriage relationship is seen as a covenant between two people and God, if one person temporarily chooses to do things they should not do, a couple can heal and put things back together when one person commits to the Lord. One of my favorite movies is the movie Fireproof. Has everyone seen that movie? It's a powerful movie. It's the church. Pastor, you know what church put that on? It's the one that.
Baptist Church in Georgia.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it.
Shorewood. Yeah, but they've put out a bunch of movies: Facing the Giants, Fireproof, Courageous. They're all great movies. And in this movie, they actually wrote a book, and the book's called The Love Dare. And that's Pastor. He gives that out like candy. And but it's a great. If you haven't watched it, I would encourage you. But in this movie, the relationship is just there's a lot of tension there, and then the wife has a relationship with a doctor, and the husband's just kind of out of the picture doing his own thing, and someone gives him this love dare. And in this love dare book, it really puts God at the center of it all, and it challenges the husband to show love to his wife in 30 or 40 different ways. I can't remember exact. Is it 40? 40 days. And so 40 days, this man's reading this devotional, doing different things to show his wife love, and God's in the center of it all. And at the end of that, that three-strand cord is woven back together. And it's even if you have watched it, that's a good one just to watch from time to time, because it'll draw you back together. But it's just when you put God in the middle of it, there's hope is not lost. Couples can build a good marriage or a godly marriage. I want a good marriage, but more importantly, I want a godly marriage. To have a good marriage, a person does not only please their spouse. To have a godly marriage, a person does not only please their spouse, they also please the Lord. That there is a powerful thing that will keep a marriage together when a couple isn't just trying to please the other person, but they're also trying to please the Lord. Because if I'm pleasing unto the Lord, I'll take care of my wife. And when you put without God, I am naturally a selfish person. I don't know about you, but if God is not on the forefront of my mind, I can be a selfish person. And if you put two selfish people together, that can end in devastation. But when you put God in the midst of it, when I'm trying to be pleasing unto the Lord and pleasing unto my wife, there is a strength that incurs and such. A man can be a good man or a godly man. A woman can be a good woman or a godly woman. A man can be a good husband or a godly husband. And a woman can be a good wife or a godly wife. And this morning we need to focus on being a godly husband or a godly wife. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5, and we'll be starting in verse 25. It says, "Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hateth his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth, even as the Lord the church." Here, this here's the command to the husband is to love their wives with everything in them. A godly man, it takes the responsibility to pray over his family, to cover them in prayer. One thing that's importantly for a godly husband is to pray over your household. In the spiritual realm, there's ranks of authority. The spiritual realm, they are obedient to authority, and that husband, they operate in different authorities, and that husband is the spiritual head of the house, the spiritual covering of the house. And when a man prays for his family, puts that covering over his wife, over the children, that is a powerful statement, and it's one important thing for each godly husband to do, is to cover their family in prayer. It is easy for a man to make all kinds of excuses. Maybe you've slept too late or you're just too busy, but this should be the most important thing for a godly man, for a godly husband to do. This here should be priority number one. In our work, if something's broke down, we always prioritize what needs to be fixed, so that way we can get back up and going. And covering your family with prayer needs to be priority one on the list, because if a man does not cover his family in prayer, it just leaves an open door for the enemy to come in and wreak havoc. So it's important, husbands, to cover your wife in prayer, your kids in prayer, your grandchildren in prayer. A man must make a choice whether or not to be a godly husband. It's our choice, whether we're going to stand up and be the leader, stand up to be the covering that the Lord has placed upon us. A good man fixes a kitchen sink. A good man will take care of the lawn. I've got a leaky sink right now for the past couple of weeks that I haven't taken care of. But a godly man covers their family in prayer every day. A godly husband loves his wife more than himself. There in Ephesians 5 and 25 we had read, "Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it." A godly man gives himself up for his wife. A godly man will put his wife ahead of himself. A godly man will take care of his wife and lay down his life for his wife. A godly man washes his wife with the water of his words. And there in verse 26 it says that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the word. The things a man says to his wife should make her feel clean and not dirty, pure and not impure. It's important that we speak words of life to our wife, words of life to our children, especially young children, as we can speak those word curses over their life. You never get anything right. You're always doing it wrong. When you speak those words over, whether it's a spouse or a child, those words have lasting effects. What a man says to his wife is critical to her security and safety, as well to the personal issues she may have to fight. A man can comfort his wife quicker with his words than anything else will comfort her. A wife can be having a bad day. A wife can be struggling. If that man just says, honey, it's going to be okay, and we're going to get through this. You're doing good. Just keep on pressing on. There's power when a husband speaks those words over his wife. A man might cut the grass, but not pray for his family, which means there's no guard at the gate of his marriage. It's important to take care of the outside of the house, but more importantly, it's important to take care of the spiritual needs of that house. And we can apply this to our own life as well. We need to cover our own life in prayer. We can put on our clean clothes, we can shine up our car, everything can look good on the outside, but we need to make that top priority in our life day after day, is to close that gate where the enemy cannot come in. Close that gate where our own self will not rise up. A good man loves his wife and provides for her, but no more than he loves himself or his buddies. We have to love our wife more than anything. In that case, she plays second fiddle to something or somebody. We need to make sure that our wife or our spouse isn't playing second in line. That we don't put her, that we don't put our job above her. That we don't put our hobbies above her. That we don't put different things above her, but that she feels special. That she knows that she is loved. A good man avoids saying the wrong things, while a goodly man speaks life into his wife. It's not just about not saying the wrong things, but it's about saying the right things. Pastor, can you tell the 10 cow story?
I can. There was a man that had a daughter, and she wasn't all that special. And in their culture, when you had a daughter, their dowry would generally be in what they had in an agricultural community. And he thought if he got a couple lambs for this girl, he would be doing well. Well, this guy shows up, and 10 cows was the max a person would ever give for a wife, and she had to be stunning to get that type of dowry. So the man comes to the father and offers him 10 cows for his daughter. Well, the father is elated and wants to make the deal before the guy changes his mind. And so, as the custom was, they would leave and go away for a year to be together, just them. And after the year, after the wedding and the years passed, they come back. The father, the village, they didn't recognize the daughter. She was totally different. She was stunning, just eloquent. And the father says, "What happened? What brought about this transformation in my daughter?" And he said, "Well, I just simply treated her like a 10 cow lot."
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes, people will respond to how they're treated.
Right.
Whether it's, a 2-chicken girl or a 10 cow girl. It just, response is often in the way the spouse is treated.
Right.
And that street runs both ways. Oftentimes the difficulty that we find in marriage is we have men that don't love their wives the way they need to be, and then wives won't respect their husbands and vice versa.
Right.
And so then they get on the hamster wheel of not loving and not respecting. And so Ephesians 5 covers that, and wives, respect your husbands, and husbands, love your wives.
Mm-hmm.
So our wives will often, if we treat our wife like a 10-cow wife, she'll be a better wife.
Yeah. And I haven't heard that one for a while, and I knew that you'd tell it better. But that's powerful. We need to treat our spouses, in the eyes of God. We're a 10-cow bride, church. And Jesus treats us as such, and we need to love our spouses the same way that Christ has loved us. Brother Gary?
In the Hebrew wedding culture, the dowry presented to the father of the bride reflects the value of the bride in the eyes of the groom. Jesus gave everything.
Gave his life.
He gave everything. He gave his life's blood, the highest price. That reflects the value that he thinks of us as his bride.
Yep, he loves us, church, and he gave us the example. He laid his life down for us, and we need to lay down our life for one another. My life is worth my wife's life, and I would do everything that I in my power to protect her. I'd, as Pastor says, I'd charge hell with a water pistol. You don't come against my wife. You'll see me raise up a little bit, but that's because of the great love. And our Lord will raise up against for us. He'll come against the enemy upon our behalf. He did come against the enemy on our behalf. And
Brother Danny goes on, Jesus challenges to have that same love one for another. He said, no greater love than this, if you lay down your life for your friend.
mm-hmm.
Are you willing to have that same Christ love one for another? And he said, this is how you'll know that you are my disciple. The love that you have one for another.
Mm-hmm.
Not your gifts, not your tithes, not your whatever. It's the love. That's how you know you're Jesus's.
Right.
Self-sacrificial, unconditional giving
Mm-hmm.
of yourself.
Yep.
And to esteem the other more highly than yourself.
Yep, that's the command, church, is to love one another. On that day, he's not going to be looking at us, how much we knew, how much we gave, how many times we prophesied, how many lessons we taught. But he's going to be looking, did you love one another? And it's important, because it's a beautiful example that we have as husband and wife. We need to love each other.
That's where we fall short, is loving each other. That's where we fall the shortest.
Right. That's where the rubber meets the road. In verse 27, it says, that he might present to himself a glorious church, and not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. As Pastor always says, when a bride comes down the aisle, that's as beautiful as she's ever going to be. They've got rid of all the blemishes. There's not a spot on that dress. That's the first time that dress has ever been worn. Most likely they spent some money on it. I know with our wedding, we had a fairly low budget wedding, but that dress was the most important thing. It was bought new. It was probably over half the price of the wedding. But she wanted to present herself without spot in that marriage day. And it's the same way that we need to be church as well. The Lord's coming back for a church, not having spot or wrinkle. A godly man does not undress his wife with his mouth. Talk bad about her. Make her look bad to others. Call him his old lady when he's out with his friends. We need to talk respectful, especially in the workplace. I work with a whole bunch of blue-collar people, and to hear the ways that they talk about their spouse is it can be degrading. And earlier on in my years, when I was a little bit ignorant, I would talk about things that I don't anymore, because my wife is honorable. A godly man does not speak about his wife in derogatory ways. Instead, he presents her to others as being without spot or wrinkle or blemish. This does not mean that the wife does not have a spot or wrinkle or blemish, only that a godly man does not point out the spots, wrinkles, or blemishes to other people. There's not a perfect person in this building. There's not a single one of us that have some spots and wrinkles and blemishes along our walk. But a godly husband will not point that out. And we need to treat our wives like a tin-cow wife, even if she may not act like it all the time or look like it or whatever. But if you don't point those things out, if you just love her, love her to her, show love to her, lift her up in the midst of other people, that it's important that we present her as such. A godly man treats his wife as the gift that God gave him. Now let's look at 1 Peter chapter 3. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, says, Likewise, ye husbands, likewise ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto thy wife, as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. When the Bible says the weaker vessel, not talking about someone being weaker. There's nothing more strong than a woman in labor. I don't think there's any man that God has given the strength to do that. When there's sickness that has struck the house, I'm the one on the couch, laying flat on my back. She's still the one caring for everybody. So this isn't talking about weaker as in strength. I am the one that has to undo the pickle jar, but that's not the strength that we're talking about here. But it's that she's precious, like gold. It's kind of like that thing, the fine china cabinet that can be easily broken. It's you keep it. It's a precious vessel. A wife is something that is to be treasured and treated with care. A godly man will take care of his wife. A godly man will treat her as such. A godly husband will treat his wife like that fine china that could easily be shattered. And that there is a type of picture as well. If a man does not speak those kind words to his wife, those words of love, that can absolutely shatter a spouse or a wife. They are they need to be loved. They are very emotional at times, and their spirits can shatter. And it's important as husbands that we treat her as such, that we lift her up, that we use kind words. And a godly man will also forgive his wife. It's important that none of us are perfect, but that goes back to loving each other. And if someone loves, love covers a multitude of sins. It's important husbands, to forgive your wives. There's a big difference between a good man and a godly man. To have that three-strand cord, a man must please God and his wife. We're probably going to, next week we'll be talking about a good wife versus a godly wife, but I don't want to start into that 3 minutes before we close out of here this morning. But this week, let us really focus on covering our families in prayer. Let us focus on covering our spouse in prayer, our children in prayer, and just being that godly man that we are called to be. Focus on treating your wife with great love and respect. You speak those kind words unto her. Don't just not say the bad words, but also say those words of love to her as well. Does anyone have any?
That word vessel in Peter right there is the same word that Paul used in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 when he's talking about how to avoid fornication, how to acquire. It says that each one should know how to possess his vessel in sanctification and honor in the King James Version. It's a little confusing because the word possess doesn't mean possess. It means to acquire. So each one of you should learn how to acquire your spouse, your wife, in the godly way, in sanctification and in honor. And then the next verse, not in the lusts of your flesh as the Gentiles do, who do not know God. And Paul's simply saying you should be married for the right reasons, godly reasons,
Right.
not fleshly reasons. So that verse is a good cross-reference, the one in Peter, with that verse in 1 Thessalonians. It's the same Greek word. It means vessel as in spouse.
Pastor?
I was gonna, the reason I give that love dare out like candy is I found 20 years of marriage counseling in that 40-day journey. I learned in it that I didn't really know how to love my wife the way Christ loved the church. And that love dare helped me. So if you got a good marriage, it'll make your marriage better.
Right.
If you got a struggling marriage, you could save it. But nonetheless, for me, it was eye-opening, and it makes a big difference in relationships.
Sometimes we just need help on learning how to love each other. And that's at least I need help in a whole lot of areas, and that book is one of those helps. All minds clear?